Today, we dive into a story that begins on a global stage but concludes shrouded in mystery. A startling discovery inside a luxury hotel room turned an ordinary investigation upside down. At its center lies the sudden and controversial death of Enkosanasi Emanuel Mthethwa, also known as Nathi, a South African politician whose final hours in Paris left the world questioning what truly took place. The title says it all: what French police uncovered in Nathi's room would change everything. Evidence gathered by French authorities hinted at a dark struggle and a deeply personal crisis connected to a haunting political past. This case became a pivotal chapter in South Africa's ongoing political drama. Before serving as South Africa's ambassador to France, and before his gruesome death in a Paris hotel room, Nathi had risen to prominence as a powerful figure in the ANC and a key cabinet minister. His rapid ascent through the ranks was shadowed by unrelenting public controversy that followed him at every turn. To grasp the significance of his final days, we must revisit the political maze in which he lived and operated. Nathi held several important cabinet positions, including Minister of Police and Minister of Arts and Culture. His tenure was marked by reckless spending, most notably the infamous Monumental Flag program, which sparked public outrage. Beneath the glamour of high-stakes politics were charges of corruption and widespread public anger, the perfect prelude to a tragedy waiting to unfold. In Paris, Nathi served what would be his final role as South Africa's ambassador to France. To many analysts, this post was both an honor and an attempt to quietly sideline his past controversies. However, his European chapter did not deliver the peaceful retirement he had imagined. The corruption scandals he left behind in South Africa continued to haunt him. As a former Minister of Police from 2009 to 2014, Nathi oversaw some of South Africa's darkest post-apartheid years, including the horrifying Marikana massacre of August 2012, when police opened fire on striking miners, killing 34 people. He was also implicated in political interference within the Crime Intelligence Division, allegations that resurfaced just weeks before his death. These revelations thrust him back into the public eye, reigniting scrutiny of his conduct and placing immense pressure on his personal and professional life. Then came the day everything unraveled. On a quiet Monday, the ambassador went missing. His South African wife reported a disturbing message to authorities, prompting police to open an urgent investigation. Attention quickly turned to the Hyatt Hotel in Port Mayo, one of Paris's most prestigious high-rises. The elegant landmark would soon become the tragic stage for the ambassador's final act. The following morning, the search ended in devastation. Nathi's body was discovered in the hotel courtyard, far below his 22nd floor suite. The suspicious circumstances immediately raised alarms, and French police treated the scene as a potential homicide. The Paris 1st Judicial Police District took charge of the investigation. Initial reports described the fatal fall as an accident, but what investigators found inside the hotel room told a far more complex story, one that would grip both French detectives and South African officials. The window of Nathi's tightly sealed luxury room had been forced open, a detail highly unusual in such establishments. This immediately shifted the case from a simple accident to a possible act of violence. Yet the most shocking discovery was not a weapon or confidential document, but something deceptively ordinary, a pair of scissors. Found near the forced window, investigators believed the scissors had been used to bypass the window's safety mechanism. That single object transformed the entire investigation. The forced window and the improvised tool pointed toward a desperate, possibly premeditated act. French authorities cautiously leaned toward the theory of suicide, noting there were no signs of struggle, drug use, or external foul play. Still, in South Africa, where political scandals are rarely accepted at face value, that suicide explanation seemed far too convenient. The combination of the threatening message, the broken window, and the scissors appeared almost scripted to some observers, fueling widespread skepticism. People began asking the burning question, why? Why would a veteran politician, serving as ambassador in one of the world's most romantic cities, die so violently. Many linked his death to the political corruption scandals back home, crises that perhaps had become too heavy to bear. Just days before his death, Mthethwa's name had surfaced prominently in explosive testimonies before a judicial commission investigating state capture and political interference within South Africa's police services. Key witnesses, including senior officers, alleged that ministers had meddled in criminal cases, obstructing justice. One police general even accused Mthethwa of interfering in a high-profile case against the former head of crime intelligence, a move described as the worst act of political interference the general had ever witnessed. This testimony reopened a dark chapter of Mthethwa's career, thrusting him back into public scrutiny and creating a storm of speculation about his true state of mind. The story soon divided into two competing narratives, one of personal tragedy, a man undone by guilt and despair, and another of a politically motivated cover-up, perhaps even assassination. The discovery of the scissors and the absence of any struggle pointed toward suicide, but the timing of the testimony and the immense political pressure hinted at something deeper. Was Mthethwa silenced, or was he driven to his breaking point by fear of legal and political ruin? The ominous message he sent to his wife added emotional weight, painting the portrait of a man battling turmoil on both personal and professional fronts. His message, interpreted as an apology and a declaration of intent, amplified the belief that he might have taken his own life. The case quickly became one of the most talked about mysteries in both France and South Africa. Was this the result of political persecution? Or a tragic surrender to unbearable guilt? Unanswered questions continued to keep the investigation alive and public curiosity burning. Meanwhile, the South African government's hesitant response only deepened suspicion. President Ramaphosa issued brief condolences, but Pretoria's reluctance to challenge the French findings appeared evasive. The South African Police Service's decision to send a delegation to Paris was viewed by critics as an attempt to control the narrative and monitor the independent investigation. A subtle tension emerged between French and South African investigators, a subplot of competing jurisdictions and national pride. And yet, at the center of it all remained one haunting symbol, the scissors. In any death investigation, scissors used to force open a 20-second floor window suggest determination and intent. But in the context of politics, that same object takes on a chilling symbolism, perhaps a final attempt to escape confinement, both literal and metaphorical. Could it be that a man who once commanded South Africa's police force, accustomed to layers of security and control, was reduced to using a simple pair of scissors for his last act on earth? If so, that gesture spoke of profound desperation, loneliness, and isolation in his final hours. The detail transformed what could have been a quiet tragedy into an almost poetic act of defiance, a man breaking through his own barriers, both physical and psychological. News of the incident spread rapidly across global media. Headlines about Mthethwa's death, the Paris hotel fall, and his links to political corruption went viral. Analysts and journalists revisited his career, the allegations of interference, the Marikana massacre, and the extravagant art spending scandal. His legacy was being dissected even more harshly in death than it had been in life. Public protests back home reflected a growing distrust toward South Africa's political elite. Many citizens questioned the speed with which authorities labeled the death a suicide, as well as the lack of independent verification. The room was too tidy, the timeline too convenient, and the evidence too perfectly aligned. For many, the case represented something larger, a symbol of a government riddled with secrecy, impunity, and unaccountability. Regardless of what conclusions emerge from the French investigation, Mthethwa's death stands as a mirror to the failing political system he once served. It reignited debates around state capture, corruption, and accountability, and raised the painful question of whether this was a man fleeing disgrace or one silenced by those he once protected. Perhaps in his final moments, he realized his power was gone and he was utterly alone. French officials meticulously reviewed every detail, confirming the forced window and the scissors, but even their final report could not pierce through the fog of politics and diplomacy. Nathama's story, punctuated by the Marikana victims, political scandals, and ANC power struggles, transformed from a single man's tragedy into a haunting chapter of global political history. As the French inquiry continues and South Africa faces growing backlash over allegations of political impropriety, one truth remains: power is never as simple as it appears. The mystery of the 22nd floor, the shattered window, and the lonely pair of scissors will fuel speculation for years to come. What do you think truly happened in that Paris hotel room? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story fascinated you, don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell for more deep dives into the world's most shocking political and celebrity scandals. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, power often hides its darkest truths behind the brightest lights.